Hey Maximizers, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Crystal, and this video is all about how to budget and save for an upcoming trip, okay? So a lot of people are asking, how do you budget? How do you find the money to go on a trip? What are you doing? And I am here to share with you a couple ways, a couple tips and tricks that I found along the way that have been useful for me and even for some of my friends and family members on how we budget and save for trips. So if you're interested in hearing how I budget and save for a trip, just keep on watching. So the first thing, and I think I have five tips here. I don't know. If you know me, you know 5 is a very special number to me. So we have 5 tips. And the first tip is literally choose your trip. You want to figure out all the logistics. Who you're going with, how you're getting there, plane, train, road trip. You need to figure out all the logistics and you need to choose a date. Personally, if it's like I would say over like $700 or $800 trip, you'll know how much. Like, cause going to like Mexico or going to Paris, those are expensive trips, as opposed to me going to like a beach weekend trip. 2 totally different things. So, 2 totally different like price ranges and 2 totally different styles of planning, because if the trip is only going to cost me $300, I could probably save that in less than a month if I focus, right? But if the trip is going to cost me $3,000, we probably need like a year to plan that, okay? If not more, if we have time. So you want to choose your trip, where you're going, who you're going with, what those travel plans look like, okay? So you want to, first step is choose your trip. And you know I have notes here, okay? Once your trip is chosen, this is when your budget kind of develops. Again, if I'm taking a road trip to the beach, my travel costs are just gas, right? Because I'm going to drive my own car to the beach, because the beach is like, 2 hours away? Or I could go to a beach that's 4 hours away and I would still drive my own car. I'm only incurring gas, which would be like $100, $150 round trip. But if I'm going to Paris, I need to start looking up flights to see what that looks like. I need to start looking up hotels to see what that looks like, okay? So you need to develop your budget. There's 5 categories I have: transportation, hotel or lodging, food, spending money, and any excursions. So you need to price out all of those things so you know how much it's going to cost you for that trip. If it's an international trip, I say a year for international is the minimum that I need to financially plan for that. Anything domestic, 6 months, I'm fine with. Unless it's like a Vegas trip, I'm going to need like 8 to 9 months, because that's like a big trip to me, because there's so much to do in Vegas, so much money to be spent. That's just my personal, the way that I found works out best. So you want to price out everything, and that is going to set up your budget. So once you have everything priced out, you know how much it's going to cost for your flights, how much it's going to cost for your transportation, for your hotel, whatever, right? Once you have that number, the next step is have some sort of travel account or travel fund, travel cash envelope, so you can have that money set aside. And I'm going to tell you how to set the money aside, but I think having the account set up first is important before you start getting that money, because otherwise payday will come and you're like, oh, I need to save, we're going to go over $50 for my trip. Where do I put it? And then it may sit in your bank account and you may spend it. So set up where you're going to house this money first. And also bear in mind if you have any deadlines. If you're going on a group trip and we're buying our flights in 2 months, you need to make sure that you have that money in 2 months. We're going to get to that in a second, but I'm just giving you the reasons why. Have a bank account, a savings account, a cash envelope, whatever. Have a place to store that money. Now, you have your total funds. You want to look at your deadlines. So if you need to buy flights or rent a car or book a hotel and you have to prepay, have those deadlines set up so you know how much money you need in the account by which day, okay? Once you have your deadlines and once you have your amount, how many pay periods do you have? Or say, how are you funding this trip? Are you using a side hustle, or are you paying from your main income source, which could be a job, it could be whatever, right? If it's your main income source, how many pay periods do you have until you need to have all of your money, until your trip needs to be fully funded, okay? So typically, when I travel, the only thing I pay for up front is going to be the flights. Unless it's like a cruise and you do a cruise payment plan. If it's somewhere that I have to fly, the most important thing for me is getting the flights as cheap as possible. I personally only fly Southwest. Don't fly any other airline because you get 2 check bags, 2 carry-ons, all free. I earn points with them. So Southwest is my preferred airline. So I'm looking at Southwest to see how cheap the flight is. And I am making sure that that's the amount I have for flights. That's the only thing I typically prepay for. Everything else I pay for at the time of travel. So the hotel, I pay at check-in. The rental car, you pay when you pick it up. Food, you pay for when you get there. You have all your totals and you have your deadlines. The next thing is, how are you paying for this trip? Are you funding it from your main paycheck, or are you funding it from a side hustle? Once you figure out where the money is coming from, you can do 2 things. If you have a side hustle, you will break it up and say, okay, I need to sell 100 products in the next 6 months to cover this trip. If you're doing your paychecks, you need to see, how many paychecks do I have between now and this trip, or now and between my first deadline, okay? So if you know the flight is going to cost you $300 and you don't have that $300 right now, how soon can you get that? For flights, you want to go ahead and you want to get them as soon as possible because the price will increase, okay? So outside of that, you want to see how many paychecks do you have between now and the time you want your trip funded. I like to have all of my trip money at least a week or 2 before the trip day. So I'll look at my calendar and I'll say, okay, let's just say that I'm looking at my calendar up here. Let's just say that we are going on a trip that's 8 months away, and our budget for that trip is $1,200. That's how much it's going to cost for everything, okay? It's a domestic trip. Maybe we're going to the beach for a weekend or something, or for a few days. $1,200, and I have notes here, is how much it's going to cost us. And that trip is 16 paychecks away. So it's going to take me 16 paychecks to have my trip fully funded 2 weeks before we leave. So that means every single paycheck, I need to put $75 away. I am the queen of breaking things up. All of my bills that are over $100 are split. So every week I'm putting something towards it so that I'm not overwhelmed with $300 bills and it's just like, oh my goodness, okay? So split it up. Make it more manageable. If you're getting a bonus at work, maybe save that bonus if it's additional, right? If you're doing a side hustle, pick it up. Maybe you get a part-time job. I know my sister, she's a teacher. In the summer, she gets a part-time job just to fund her traveling because she travels a lot, right? So she wants to have a good summer, so she picks up a part-time job, works a few hours a week, but makes just enough to fund her traveling, all right? Or when she bought her house, she got a part-time job to furnish her house, right? Because she didn't want to mess with her main income. She wanted to generate income other ways. So you have to figure out how you want to fund that trip, see how you get paid, and then literally split it up. I did $1,200 divided by 16 and got $75 per paycheck, okay? Once you have all that, the last step is to just start saving and hold yourself accountable. You have to realize that if you want to go on that trip, you have to start planning as soon as possible and give yourself as much time, okay? Even add in a cushion. I usually add at least $200 to my trips because I see that when I travel, I oftentimes go over budget. So now I've added in like a contingency fund of like $200 of a buffer. But I save all year round for trips even when I don't have one. That's another good tip I would say. Even if you just save $20 a paycheck, always have something. So in the event that you have to get a flight, you have most of, if not all of the money ready to buy the flight. And then you can save up everything else, okay? So those are my tips. Like I said, I had about 5 of them on how to budget and save for a trip. Go over the 5 tips again. Choose your trip is number 1. Number 2 is create your budget. Gather up your budget. So you got to price out your transportation. You got to price out your hotel, your food, your spending, and any excursions. Then you need to see how far away the trip is. So that you can logistically plan. Tip 4, which is to split up the payments based on how you're paying for the trip. And tip number 5 is to always have some sort of trip budget brewing. Even if it's $10 to $20 per paycheck, even if you don't have a trip necessarily planned, always be planning for it. Throw $10, $20 into your travel fund so that way you always have it and you can always set yourself up for a trip, okay? If you guys have any questions, any comments, let me know how you budget for trips, how you save and travel for trips. I would love to hear about it. You can check out my latest budget setup video where I do include my fund that I have that is for travel/debt. So I put money away every single week. It goes into that fund. So when I want to pay off debt or when I want to travel, mostly I use it for travel if I'm being honest with you, because I have a lot of traveling coming up. But yeah. So again, if you have any questions, please comment those down below. That's it, maximizers, for my 5 tips on how to save for a vacation trip. Again, if you have any questions, please comment those down below. A lot of people always ask me, how do you save for a trip? And I come up with these tips because I believe it's definitely the best way to kind of plan out so that you always have a trip fund or you're always actively planning towards a trip and you're putting it in your budget just as if it was a bill or a debt that you needed to pay, okay? So, of course, if you have any questions, please comment those down below. I do offer one-on-one coaching, so if you're interested in me helping you set up your budget or your trip budget, definitely click the link in the description box and I'll be more than happy to help you with that, okay? I just want to thank you all so much for the love and support. I really appreciate it. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.